we take to the audience questions, what you're talking about, though, you, Governor, said that the Congress is feckless. You said you don't have confidence because this is my thought is I remember when the Biden administration took over and I said to my wife, I can't believe it was like 9 months they'd been in charge, and how in 9 months you could take this great country and it was just changing rapidly in a negative way. Open borders, lawlessness, no following of the rule of law. It was just like, how could it happen in 9 months? The same is true, regardless of how successful you guys are, you're gone and there's another change in administration. Can it change again in 9 months without there being permanent legislation passed by Congress, and yet they're feckless? I mean,
well, let's not forget, under Trump 1, Trump 45, he had the House and Senate. They didn't help him. And I'm not just talking about Democrats. There's not Republicans on Hill. They need to lead too.
Yeah.
So bottom line is now we have both again. And as Governor DeSantis said, we're not getting what we need. So they didn't learn a lesson from the first administration. I was hoping and praying to learn the lesson. Let's hope they come through. But you're exactly right. He had the House and Senate, Trump 45. He's got the House and Senate 47. What have they done? Nothing. So hopefully they wake up, or some Republican senators in Congress need to leave too. We need to vote them out because they're not doing the right thing.
Well, so much of the modern Congress is just performative. It's just political theater. It's not substantive. They're not engaged in the business of accomplishment. It's all about putting on a show to be able to get returned to office and stay there for as long as possible. It's one of the reasons why I think we need term limits for members of Congress, which I think would be really good. But it just needs to be, because it's just like, you turn on cable news and you got these guys jabbing. It's like, what have you done, okay? I know you like to jab. I know you like to talk. What have you actually done? You've been in now so President Trump's only been in for 60 days, a little bit more than that. Congress was in almost 2 weeks, 3 weeks before that. So since January 3rd, what have they done? How many weeks have they had off for fundraising and junkets and all this other stuff? And why aren't they really attuned to what needs to be done to deliver support for the president's agenda, but just as importantly, solidifying these changes so that it is actually in law? And don't say it can't be done. Biden, they only had 50 senators when he came in. They had a very narrow majority in the House. Did that stop them from doing all this stuff? They did a lot of bad legislation, but they did it. They got it done. You look in the 90s, Republicans of Congress, I mean, when Clinton was president, they passed very tough immigration laws back then. It's popular. And so I don't even see an effort really to push this forward. And the thing is when you have a new president come in, you have a certain period of time where you have a lot of momentum, right? Just political physics, naturally, the momentum for the first 100 days is going to be greater than the momentum 2 years later. That's just the way politics works. And what I just see is I don't see them really in Congress working to seize the moment. And to understand that this is different, that we actually have a chance to really make serious changes. I see the president doing things that are really, really transformative, but I don't see the same energy from Congress. And so the answer is almost anything the president is currently doing could be undone. Now, these guys build the border wall. That's hard to undo because you have to tear. That's one of the reasons why I support it. It's easy to stop building it. When Biden came in, he stopped all the construction. They left the fence there. He tried to sell the fence, right before he left office, and that was stopped, thankfully. But stuff that's done by executive can be done. And, just the flip side is like Biden passed things through the Senate with the so-called reconciliation with 50 votes, Inflation Reduction Act, all these things, trillions of dollars of waste. The Congress now, we have 53 Republicans. We could repeal all of Biden's spending policies in the upcoming reconciliation, and yet they're not even proposing to do all that. So, look, it's just, it is what it is. And so, we just got to hope that these guys on the administrative side are able to get as much done as possible. And maybe that creates enough momentum where no one in the future would want to reel it in. And I do think the Democrats privately admit that Biden's open border was one of the key factors in them losing the White House because it was just so outrageous and indefensible that a lot of voters who may have voted Democrat in the past, were really disenchanted by that. But you got to get this stuff into law. And it's not always easy. Washington's tough, but I don't even see an attempt to do it. And I think that should frustrate all of us.
I agree. I say to my wife that if the only two things that happen in the Trump administration, notwithstanding all the great work you guys are doing, are term limits and a balanced budget amendment, the country's saved for another 200 years. And it's really what we have.
Well,
in
Florida has done this.
Yeah.
So we at the legislature under Article 5 has done term limits, and we need enough states to do it. We've also done a balanced budget amendment. We now have, I think, 28 or 29 states nationwide. If you get 34, that triggers to where this amendment would be debated and potentially sent to the states for ratification. I'm actually going to be traveling around to some other states where they're going to think about voting on it and urge the legislatures to do it. Because, you know, the reality is if we'd had a balanced budget amendment in place 25 years ago, the country wouldn't be $36 trillion in debt. That's just a fact. If you look at Florida, we have a balanced budget requirement. And what have we done? Since I've been governor, we've paid off the state over 180 years, the debt that Florida racked up. We've paid off 41% of it just in the last 6 years. So we have the lowest debt per capita of any state in the country, you know, that has state debt. And so it can be done. And I understand it's more difficult in Washington because of everything, but left to their own devices, this is another kind of thing. Even if they get a balanced budget this year, which they're not going to do, but even if they did, future Congresses can unravel that. They say they'll do these spending deals where they'll promise to cut spending 10 years from now. So even if that was something that made fiscal sense, there's no way to enforce that. New Congresses get in. So I agree with what Richard's saying. You got to have structural reform to change the behavior of that institution, because it's a failed institution at this point, and they're not just going to voluntarily turn it around.